You probably think the most dangerous place for a human being is outer space, but you're actually wrong. There is a place right here on Earth that is so hostile and so crushing that we have sent more people to the moon than we have to its deepest corner. The Mariana Trench is a massive, dark scar on the crust of our planet hidden beneath the waves of the western Pacific Ocean. It is a place where the sunlight never reaches, the water is nearly freezing, and the pressure is so high it would flatten a steel submarine like a soda can. For a long time, scientists thought nothing could live down there, thinking it was just a cold, dead desert. But as we've started to send cameras and brave explorers down into the abyss, we've discovered that the trench is actually a world of its own, filled with strange fish, giant single-celled monsters, and even our own trash. We're going to look at what it's actually like at the bottom of the world, how it was formed, and the terrifying things we found lurking in the dark. To understand how deep the Mariana Trench really is, you have to stop thinking in miles and start thinking in mountains. If you took Mount Everest, the tallest mountain in the world, and flipped it upside down into the trench, there would still be over a mile of water above its peak. We call the very deepest point of this trench the Challenger Deep. It sits nearly 36,000 feet below the surface. To put that in perspective, when you fly in a commercial airplane, you're usually sitting at about 35,000 feet. So imagine looking out the window of a plane at the ground below. That is the distance of water that would be sitting on top of you if you were at the bottom. The trench itself isn't just a small hole. It's a massive crescent-shaped valley that stretches for about 1,500 miles. It's located east of the Philippines and south of Japan, near the island of Guam. It exists because of a process called subduction. Think of the Earth's crust like a giant jigsaw puzzle made of pieces called plates. These plates are always moving, very slowly. In this part of the ocean, the Pacific Plate is slamming into the Philippine Plate. Because the Pacific Plate is older and heavier, it's being forced underneath the other one, sliding down into the hot interior of the Earth. This creates a deep, V-shaped canyon that goes deeper than anything else on the planet. The most terrifying thing about the Mariana Trench isn't the darkness or the cold, it's the pressure. When you're at the beach, the air around you is pushing on your body, but you don't feel it because your body is used to it. But as you go deeper into the water, the weight of all that water above you starts to pile up. At the bottom of the Challenger Deep, the pressure is over 1,000 times higher than it is at sea level. That's about 8 tons of pressure for every square inch of your body. Imagine having an African elephant stand on your thumb, but then imagine that weight pressing on every single part of you at once. Because of this, the floor of the trench isn't made of sand like the beaches you know. Instead, it's covered in a thick, grayish-yellow ooze. This ooze is actually a graveyard. It's made of the crushed remains of billions of tiny organisms, like plankton and microscopic shells, that have drifted down from the surface over millions of years. It's soft, silk-like, and goes on for miles. Then there's the temperature. Since no sunlight can reach this deep, there's no way for the water to stay warm. It stays just a few degrees above freezing. However, it's not all cold. There are spots called hydrothermal vents where the Earth's inner heat escapes. These vents act like underwater chimneys, belching out superheated water that is filled with minerals like sulfur and iron. It's a place of extremes, freezing water on one side and boiling, mineral-rich water on the other. Humans are naturally curious, but for a long time, the Mariana Trench was a total mystery. The first real attempt to measure it happened in 1875, during the HMS Challenger expedition. The scientists back then didn't have sonar or fancy computers. They literally tied a heavy lead weight to a very long rope and dropped it over the side of the boat. It took hours for the weight to hit the bottom, and they realized then that they had found something much deeper than anyone thought possible. It took another 85 years for humans to actually go down there themselves. In 1960, 2 men named Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh climbed into a strange-looking craft called the Trieste. It wasn't a normal submarine, it was a bathyscaphe, which is basically a giant float filled with gasoline and a tiny, thick steel ball for the crew to sit in. As they descended, the pressure became so intense that one of the outer window panes actually cracked. They were 7 miles down, trapped in a tiny metal sphere, hearing a loud bang as the glass began to fail. Most people would have panicked and tried to go back, but they kept going. They reached the bottom, stayed for about 20 minutes, and proved that humans could survive the trip. After that, the trench was left alone for a long time until movie director James Cameron, the guy who made Titanic and Avatar, decided to go down in 2012. He went in a bright green sub called the Deep Sea Challenger. He was the first person to do it solo. He spent hours filming the bottom in high definition, giving us our first real look at the alien landscape. More recently, an explorer named Victor Vescovo has made multiple trips down there, even breaking the record for the deepest dive ever. But every time someone goes down, they find something new and often something strange. You might think that nothing could live in a place with no light and crushing pressure, but life finds a way. The animals in the Mariana Trench don't look like anything you'd see in a coral reef. One of the most famous is the Mariana snailfish. It doesn't have scales, and its skin is translucent, meaning you can see its internal organs right through its body. It looks like a piece of wet tissue paper floating in the water. We also see something called amphipod gigantism. Amphipods are tiny, shrimp-like creatures. In shallow water, they're usually less than an inch long, but at the bottom of the trench, they can grow to be a foot long. One of the biggest myths about the deep ocean is that it's quiet. A few years ago, researchers dropped a titanium-encased microphone, called a hydrophone, into the Challenger Deep and left it there for 3 weeks. They expected to hear nothing but the sound of water. Instead, they heard a symphony of noise. They recorded the low moans of whales swimming miles above, the roar of ship engines passing on the surface, and the terrifying grinding sound of earthquakes happening in the Earth's crust. Sound travels much further and faster in the dense, high-pressure water of the deep, making the trench a giant ear that picks up everything happening in the Pacific. Geologically, the trench is also full of surprises. Scientists have discovered bridges that span across the width of the trench. These aren't man-made, of course. They are massive stone ridges that formed when underwater mountains were dragged into the subduction zone. They stay lodged there, acting like braces across the canyon. We also found bacteria that live near the oil seeps on the trench floor. These bacteria actually eat oil and heavy metals, surviving on things that would kill almost any other living thing. Perhaps the most shocking discovery in recent years is the human problem. When Victor Vescovo reached the bottom of the Challenger Deep in 2019, he wasn't just looking for new species. He was looking at the very floor of our planet. And what did he find? A plastic bag and candy wrappers. Even 7 miles down, in a place where no human can survive without a multi-million-dollar machine, our trash has beaten us there. It's not just big pieces of plastic either. Scientists have tested the tiny creatures living in the trench and found microplastics inside their stomachs. They also found high levels of banned chemicals, like PCBs, in the fatty tissues of these animals. These chemicals were used in the mid-20th century and were banned decades ago, but they eventually sank to the bottom of the ocean. Because the trench is like a giant drain, everything we throw into the sea eventually ends up there. It's a sobering reminder that our actions on land affect even the most remote, hidden parts of our world. The Mariana Trench is more than just a deep hole. It's a laboratory for understanding life itself. Some scientists believe that life on Earth didn't start in a warm pond on the surface, but rather in the mineral-rich waters of hydrothermal vents in the deep ocean. By studying the bacteria and creatures that survive on chemicals instead of sunlight, a process called chemosynthesis, we might be looking at the origins of our own existence. It also helps us understand other planets. Some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, like Europa and Enceladus, are thought to have deep oceans under their icy crusts. If life can survive in the extreme pressure and darkness of the Mariana Trench, it's a very good sign that life might exist elsewhere in our solar system. The trench is the closest thing we have to an alien world, and we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of its secrets. If you want to see what happens when we go even deeper into the mysteries of our planet, check out this next video.